My husband made me quit my job to focus on being a wife. I did. For 10 years. Then he served divorce papers. His lawyer said, "You have no skills, no income, no future." The judge looked at me with pity. I said nothing. Then my lawyer stood up. Asked one question. About the company I'd been running. Remotely. For 8 years. "Your Honor, this woman has no skills, no income, no future." His lawyer said it slowly. Deliberately. Like he was explaining something to a child. 10 years as a housewife. A decade-long employment gap. She's 53 years old. No recent work experience. No marketable abilities. The job market has passed her by completely. Before we continue, I want to thank you for being here. We're so close to hitting 100K subscribers. A family of women supporting women. If you believe in second chances and the courage to rebuild, please subscribe. It's free and helps us reach others who need this. Now let's see what happens next. I sat there in that courtroom, hands folded in my lap, and let every word land. Mark sat across from me looking satisfied. Almost smug. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. The moment his expensive lawyer would prove I was nothing without him. "Mrs. Parker will need significant alimony just to survive," the lawyer continued. "She has no prospects. No way to support herself. My client has been the sole provider throughout this marriage." The judge looked at me. I saw pity in her eyes. That's when my lawyer stood up. "Your Honor," Patricia said quietly, "I have one question for Mrs. Parker." The room went silent. "Mrs. Parker, could you tell the court about the company you've been running for the past 8 years? Mark's face went white. "Let me back up 10 years. To the day my husband made me quit my job to focus on being a wife. The day I became no one. It started with a promotion." His promotion. Mark came home on a Friday afternoon with champagne and that smile he used to give me back when we were happy. Senior account manager. 58,000 a year. We popped the bottle in our kitchen and he talked about the future. How we could finally relax. How his colleagues all had wives who stayed home. How I didn't need to stress myself out working retail anymore. "You could quit," he said, refilling my glass. "I make enough now. Focus on being a wife. Focus on being a wife." Like I hadn't been his wife for 10 years while also managing 3 departments at Dawson's department store. Like those two things couldn't exist at the same time. I was tired. 60-hour weeks during holiday rushes. Dealing with difficult customers and corporate restructures. Some part of me heard, "You don't need to work," and thought maybe it would be nice to rest. To have time for myself. To not feel exhausted every single day. "Hey," I said. "I'll think about it." "I already told my boss you were quitting," Mark said. Kissed my forehead. They were impressed. Said it showed I had my priorities straight. He'd already told people. Before asking me. Before I'd decided. I gave my notice the following Monday. My assistant manager Denise cried. Asked if I was sure. I wasn't sure. But Mark had already made it real by telling other people, and backing out would have made him look bad. So I cleaned out my desk on a Thursday afternoon, turned in my badge and drove home to start my new life as just a wife. The first 6 months were fine. Good even. I deep cleaned closets that hadn't been touched in years. Painted the guest room. Started a garden in our backyard because I needed something to do with my hands. I joined the church women's committee. Volunteered at the library on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Mark seemed happier. He'd come home to find dinner ready, the house spotless, me showered and dressed in actual clothes instead of my old work uniform. "This is how it should be," he'd say, kissing my cheek. "This is how it should be." Like before had been wrong somehow. Then the comments started. Small ones. Easy to dismiss if you wanted to pretend everything was fine. "Did you really need to buy the expensive butter?" When I unpacked groceries. "What did you do all day?" When he came home and found me reading on the couch. He started checking the mileage on my car. I didn't notice at first. Then I realized he was writing the numbers down in a little notebook he kept in his nightstand. When I asked why, he said he was just curious where I was going. To the grocery store. The library. Church. That was my entire world now, compressed into 3 locations within a 5-mile radius of our house. He asked for receipts. Every shopping trip. Every purchase. He'd go through them line by line, questioning why I bought this brand instead of that one, why I needed new dish soap when we still had some under the sink. My old work friends stopped calling after Mark made enough comments about them being bad influences, who'd make me miss my stressful old life. Denise invited me to lunch 3 times. I said no twice because Mark needed me home for deliveries. The third time I said yes anyway. Came home to find him waiting. 2.5 hours for lunch? He checked the mileage. What were you really doing? I stopped saying yes after that. By the end of year 2 I didn't recognize myself. I'd gained 23 pounds from stress eating and boredom. My clothes didn't fit right. The professional blazers and slacks I'd worn to work gathered dust in the back of our closet. I wore leggings and Mark's old t-shirts most days because who was going to see me? My hair had gone gray at the temples. I wanted to color it, but Mark controlled our joint account and questioned every expense over $20. Hair color. That's $40. Do you really need it? I'd become invisible. Not just to him. To myself. I'd wake up at 8 or 9, long after he left for work, and stare at our bedroom ceiling. White paint. No cracks. No water stains. Perfect and empty. I'd lie there wondering what I was supposed to do with the next 10 hours. Make another elaborate meal he'd eat without tasting? Vacuum carpets that didn't have footprints because nobody walked on them except me? I'd go to church committee meetings where women discussed bake sale logistics and vacation Bible school planning. Important things. Things that mattered to them. But I'd sit there thinking about the budget projections I used to manage, the staffing decisions, the quarterly reviews. The feeling of solving problems that had actual answers. Some days I'd sit in my car in the grocery store parking lot and cry. Not dramatic sobbing. Just quiet tears running down my face while I gripped the steering wheel and tried to remember who I used to be. I was 51 years old and I felt ancient. Erased. Then Graham died. My grandmother Grace. The woman who'd raised me after my mother left when I was 7. Graham taught me to balance a checkbook and change my own tire and never apologize for existing. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Quick. She was 87. I stood by her casket at the funeral home in a dress that didn't fit right anymore. I looked at her face and realized she was the last person who'd known me as Sarah Mitchell. Everyone else only saw Mrs. Mark Parker. The woman who used to work at Dawson's. The one who quit. Poor thing. The lawyer read the will 2 weeks later. Graham had left me $45,000. Not to Mr. and Mrs. Parker. Just to me. Sarah Mitchell Parker. There was a sealed envelope with my name written in her shaky handwriting. I opened it in the parking lot. For your escape fund whenever you need it. You're stronger than you know. Love, Graham. I sat there and felt something crack open inside my chest. Not heartbreak. Something else. Something that had been locked away for 2 years. I drove home. Mark was waiting. He asked about the will. I told him about the money. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. We should invest it in our future, he said. Put it in our joint account. Maybe remodel the basement. I've been wanting a game room. I smiled. Nodded. Told him I'd think about it. But I wasn't thinking about it. I'd already decided. Graham had given me a door. I just had to figure out how to walk through it without him noticing I was leaving. 3 months after Graham's funeral, I was still carrying that note in my purse. The paper had gone soft from being folded and unfolded so many times. For your escape fund whenever you need it. Some days I'd pull it out while sitting in my car outside the grocery store, reading those words until they blurred. Mark kept asking about the money. When could we access it? Had I talked to the lawyer? What was taking so long? Estate taxes, I told him. Legal paperwork. It's complicated. He'd sigh. Complain about how his mother's estate had been settled in 6 weeks. I'd nod and change the subject and feel the lie sitting heavy in my chest. The truth was I'd already moved Graham's money. Opened a new account at a different bank across town. Used my maiden name. Sarah Mitchell. A name I hadn't used in 12 years. The bank teller had looked at my driver's license, Sarah Mitchell Parker, and asked if I wanted the account under my full legal name. Just Mitchell, I'd said. It's simpler. She'd smiled and processed the paperwork. $45,000 deposited into an account my husband didn't know existed. I told myself I was just keeping it safe. That I'd figure out what to do with it eventually. That I wasn't really lying, just postponing the truth. But I knew better. On a Wednesday morning in late September, I told Mark I was going to a church bake sale planning meeting. He didn't look up from his laptop. Just waved a hand in dismissal. I got in my car and started driving. Not toward the church. Away from our neighborhood. Away from streets where people knew me as Mark's wife. I drove for 40 minutes, watching our suburb fade into countryside and then into a small town I'd never been to before. Lubbock. Population 8,000 according to the sign on Route 9. Main Street had the kind of storefronts you see in postcards. Brick buildings, striped awnings, a hardware store with its name painted on the window in gold letters. I parked and walked without knowing where I was going. Just walked. Past a bookstore. A pharmacy. An antique shop with furniture crowding the sidewalk. Then I saw it. Corner Cup Cafe. The name was painted on the window in faded letters. A for sale sign was taped inside, edges curling away from the glass. I stopped walking. Stood there on the sidewalk staring at it. The place looked half dead. Through the grimy window I could see mismatched chairs around small tables. A counter with a coffee machine that looked older than me. Menu boards with prices written in marker that had started to fade and smear. But there was something about the morning light coming through those east-facing windows. Something about the way the door sat slightly crooked in its frame. I pushed the door open. It stuck. I had to push harder and it gave with a scraping sound that probably should have been fixed years ago. A woman looked up from wiping down tables. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. Tired eyes that had seen too many slow days in a dying business. "We're closing in 10 minutes, she said. Not rude. Just factual. But I can get you coffee if you want. Is this place really for sale? She set down her rag. Studied me for a moment. You interested in buying a failing cafe? Maybe. She laughed. Not a happy sound. Owner died 6 months ago. Heart attack right there behind the counter. His kids want to sell. Get it off their hands. They live in Florida. Don't want to deal with it. How much are they asking? $38,000. For everything. Equipment, lease, business name, whatever inventory's left. She picked up her rag again. Place hasn't turned a profit in 3 years. You'd be buying a headache. I looked around. Counted 8 tables. The counter had 6 stools, only 4 of them matching. The coffee machine had a crack running down the side. The floor tiles were coming up in the corners. Can I get that coffee? I asked. Her name was Rita. She'd worked there for 18 years. Longer than I'd worked at Dawson's. She made me coffee in a chipped mug and didn't charge me for it. We sat at the table by the window and she told me about the place. How it used to be good. How the owner, Jerry, had stopped caring after his wife died. How customers had slowly stopped coming when the quality dropped and nothing got fixed. Why do you stay? I asked. Rita shrugged. Habit, I guess. Don't know what else I'd do. I'm 58. Who's hiring 58-year-old waitresses? I knew that feeling. That sense of being too old, too far removed, too unemployable. I drove home thinking about those east-facing windows. That crooked door. Rita's tired eyes. Mark came home after 9 that night. Smelled like beer and something sweet. Perfume maybe. He blamed it on happy hour with coworkers. Microwaved the dinner I'd left covered on the stove. Ate it in front of the TV without saying a word to me. I lay in bed that night doing math in my head. 45,000 from Graham. 38 for the cafe. 7,000 left for operating costs. Supplies. Maybe 1 month of safety net if things went wrong. It was insane. I hadn't worked in 2 years. I didn't know anything about running a food business. The equipment was old. The location was 40 minutes away. I'd have to lie to Mark every single day. But I knew retail. Knew inventory management. Employee scheduling. Customer service. Profit margins. I'd turned around 3 struggling departments at Dawson's. This was just smaller. More personal. I could do this. The next morning after Mark left for work, I called the lawyer handling the estate. Asked questions. Could I see the books? Was Rita included in the sale? What were the lease terms? The lawyer laughed when I asked about books. Lady, the old man ran everything on napkins and kept cash in a coffee can. You want to see the books? I can show you a shoebox full of receipts. I bought it anyway. Used my maiden name on all the paperwork. Set up an LLC. Mitchell Enterprises. Had the mail sent to a P.O. box in Millbrook that I rented under the same name. Bought a prepaid phone and hid it in my car, buried under the spare tire in the trunk where Mark would never think to look. The lying got easier with practice. The inheritance was still tied up. Lawyers were slow. These things took time. Mark believed me because I'd never given him reason not to. The hard part was the fear. I told Mark I'd joined an early morning prayer group at church. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 a.m. He barely looked up from his laptop when I said it. Didn't ask which church or who led the group or why I'd suddenly gotten religious at dawn. The first morning I drove to Millbrook to open the cafe, my hands shook so hard on the steering wheel I almost turned back. It was 4 a.m. Still dark. The roads were empty. I felt like a criminal. Like someone would see me and know I was lying. No, I was sneaking around. No, I wasn't the obedient wife Mark had spent 2 years creating. Rita was already there when I pulled into the parking lot. Standing by her car with 2 coffee cups from the gas station down the street. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she walked over and handed me one of the cups. "You're really doing this," she said. Not a question. I nodded. Couldn't quite speak yet. "Okay then." She pulled out a set of keys. "Let's get started." We went inside together. Rita showed me how everything worked. The coffee maker needed 3 taps on the left side to start brewing. Had to be exactly 3. 2 didn't work. 4 made it overflow. The sandwich press only heated properly if you held the handle down for the first 30 seconds. The cash register stuck on the number 7 every single time. "Jerry kept meaning to fix that," Rita said. "Never got around to it." The place was falling apart. The walk-in cooler made a grinding sound. The bathroom door didn't latch properly. Half the light bulbs were burned out. But it was mine. For the first time in 2 years I had something that belonged to me. Not to Mark. Not to us. To me. Rita didn't ask why I was using my maiden name. Didn't ask why I jumped every time the door chimed. Didn't ask why I kept checking my phone like I was expecting bad news. She just said, "We open in 20 minutes. You know how to make a latte?" I didn't. He taught me. By 9:30 that morning, I'd served 42 customers. Burned my hand twice on the steam wand. Forgotten someone's order and had to remake their sandwich. Said, "I'm sorry" more times than I could count. But I'd done it. I'd opened a business. Run a shift. Made it through. I drove home with burns on my hands and coffee stains on my shirt and my heart beating fast with something that felt like hope. Mark was still asleep when I got there. Mark was in the shower when I came through the door that first morning. I could hear the water running upstairs. Smell his cologne mixing with steam. I'd been awake for 5.5 hours. My hands smelled like coffee grounds and had 2 fresh burns from the steam wand. My back ached from being on my feet since 4:30. I was exhausted and exhilarated and terrified all at once. I changed my shirt in the laundry room. Stuffed the coffee-stained one in the bottom of the hamper. Washed my hands twice to get the smell out. By the time Mark came downstairs, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, looking like I'd just woken up. "How was prayer group?" he asked, pouring himself coffee from the pot I'd made. "Good," I said. "Peaceful." He nodded. Didn't ask anything else. Didn't wonder why I'd showered before leaving the house at 4:30 in the morning. Didn't notice the exhaustion I was trying to hide behind my teacup. That became my life. 3:45 wake-ups. Dressing in the dark while he snored off whatever he'd drunk the night before. Driving 40 minutes to Millbrook with the prepaid phone hidden in my purse. Opening the cafe at 4:30. Working until 9. Driving home. Pretending I'd been at church or running errands or doing anything except what I'd actually been doing. The first year nearly killed me. Rita and I worked alone most days. Just the 2 of us managing everything. I learned to make lattes and cappuccinos and macchiatos. Learned which customers wanted to chat and which ones wanted to be left alone with their coffee. Learned to prep sandwich ingredients so we wouldn't run out during the lunch rush. Learned to work the ancient cash register that still stuck on the number 7. Our morning regulars became familiar faces. Construction workers who came in at 5 for coffee before heading to job sites. Nurses finishing night shifts at the county hospital, looking exhausted in their scrubs. Truck drivers passing through on Route 9 who said our coffee was better than the chain places. There was Frank, a 68-year-old retired mechanic who came in every morning at 6. He told me once that my coffee was better than his ex-wife's, and I could tell he meant it as the highest compliment he could give. There was Linda, a hospice nurse who worked overnight and stopped in at 7:30 on her way home. She always ordered the same thing. Large coffee, light and sweet, and a blueberry muffin. There was David, who drove trucks and knew our hours because he'd pass through Millbrook every Tuesday and Thursday around 5:15. They started calling me Ms. Mitchell, asking how my day was going, telling me about their lives. I was someone again. Not just Mark's wife. Not just the woman who used to work at Dawson's. I was Ms. Mitchell, who ran the cafe and remembered your order and asked about your sick dog. The cafe made maybe $300 on a good day that first year. After paying Rita, restocking supplies, and covering the lease, I'd clear $50 profit if I was lucky. Some days we lost money. Some days I'd drive home wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. But I kept going. Mark noticed I was losing weight. Mentioned it one night over dinner. "You look good," he said. "Different." I did look different. The early mornings and physical work had stripped away the weight I'd gained. I was sleeping better despite the exhaustion. Had color in my face again. "Must be all that volunteering," I said. He nodded. Went back to his food. What he didn't notice was that I was waking up at 3:45 every morning. That I was gone before dawn. That I came home smelling like coffee even though I'd changed my shirt and washed my hands. He didn't notice because he'd started staying out later. Coming home after 10, sometimes after 11. Smelling like cigarette smoke and something sweet I couldn't quite identify. When I asked where he'd been, he'd say happy hour with coworkers. Office thing. You wouldn't understand. I stopped asking. Instead, I started checking our joint account. Not every day. Just occasionally. Carefully. Making sure to clear the browser history after. That's when I saw the withdrawals. $1,500. $3,000. $2,500. Always in round numbers. Always with no explanation. One night I asked him about it. Kept my voice casual. Light. I noticed some money came out of our savings. What was that for? His face changed. Got hard in a way I wasn't used to seeing. Investment opportunities through the office, he said. You wouldn't understand the details. I'd like to understand. Sarah. He said my name like a warning. I'm the one who works. I'm the one who makes the money. I think I can decide how to invest it without getting permission from someone who hasn't had a job in 3 years. I didn't say anything. Just nodded. Let it drop. But I started keeping records. A little notebook hidden in my car. Every withdrawal he made, I wrote it down. Date. Amount. His excuse if he gave one. $15,000 disappeared that first year. $15,000 from our joint savings while I was working 80-hour weeks to build something he knew nothing about. I said nothing. What could I say without revealing I was checking the accounts? Without explaining why I wasn't panicking about money when I supposedly had no income? The secret I was keeping had walls built from other secrets. Month 14, I hired my first employee besides Rita. Her name was Jasmine. 29 years old with a 3-year-old daughter. She came in for the interview wearing jeans that had been washed so many times they were nearly white. Shirt with a small stain on the collar she tried to hide with a cardigan. She sat across from me at one of the cafe tables and her hands shook when she filled out the application. I haven't worked in 4 years, she said. My ex said he'd support us. Then he left. Stopped paying child support. I've been applying everywhere but nobody calls back. I looked at her application. High school diploma. Some community college. Previous experience as a waitress before her daughter was born. When can you start? I asked. She blinked. You're hiring me? $12 an hour. Tips split evenly between everyone working that shift. Can you do mornings? 6 to noon. He started crying. Right there at the table. Said yes through the tears. Said thank you about 15 times. Rita took her under her wing the way she'd taken me. Taught her the systems. Showed her how to handle the difficult customers with grace. Jasmine was good. Fast learner. Kind to people. Her daughter's daycare was 2 blocks away, so she could walk there after her shift. Then came Bobby. 42 years old. Line cook. Came in asking if we were hiring and I almost said no because we didn't really need anyone else yet. Then he mentioned he'd just gotten out. 3 years for possession. Couldn't find work anywhere because of his record. I can cook, he said. I'm good at it. I just need someone to give me a chance. I hired him for kitchen work. $10 an hour to start. He showed up 15 minutes early to every single shift. Never complained. Made breakfast sandwiches that were so good people started coming in just for those. Maria came next. 52 years old. From Guatemala. Her English was rough but her baking was perfect. She made bread the way Graham used to, by feel not measuring. He had 3 kids. Husband had left her 6 months earlier. Disappeared back to Guatemala and left her with nothing. These people became my family. My real family. The ones who understood what it meant to rebuild yourself from nothing. They figured out pretty quickly that something wasn't normal about my situation. The way I jumped every time the door chimed. How I never answered my personal phone in front of them. The fact that I insisted they call me Ms. Mitchell, never Sarah. Rita pulled me aside one morning during a slow period. "Honey," she said quietly, "I don't need to know your business. But we've got your back. Whatever you're running from or hiding from, you're safe here." I almost cried. Instead, I just nodded and went back to wiping down tables. By the end of year 2, the cafe was actually making money. Real money. I'd repainted the walls a warm cream color. Replaced the broken equipment. Updated the menu with items Bobby suggested. Fixed the bathroom door and the grinding walk-in cooler and even the cash register that stuck on 7. We were making $700 on weekdays. $1,000 on Saturdays. After expenses and payroll and everything else, I was clearing $6,000 a month. That's when I started looking at the second location. Another failing cafe in Millbrook. Owner was retiring. Wanted $18,000 for it. I had $22,000 in my business account by then. Rita said I was crazy to expand so fast. "You're barely 2 years in," she said. "You should wait. Build up more savings." But I'd spent 12 years in retail management. I knew how to scale. Knew when to grow. I bought it. Put Jasmine in charge. She cried again when I told her. Within 6 months, both locations were profitable. I was making more money than I'd ever made at Dawson's. More than Mark made in his fancy account manager job. And he had no idea. He thought I was volunteering at church. Doing book club on Thursday nights. Maybe running errands. He had no idea I was running 2 businesses 40 minutes away in a town where nobody knew Mrs. Mark Parker existed. By year 7, I'd opened 4 locations. The original cafe, the second one Jasmine managed, a third near the hospital that did brisk business with medical staff, and a fourth by the highway that caught travelers and truckers. I had 32 employees. I was clearing $12,000 a month in owner's draw. Mark still had no idea. I'd gotten better at the lying. Better at the logistics. I worked the opening shift at the original location 6 days a week, 4:30 to 9:30, then spent a few hours rotating between the other locations. Checking in. Handling problems. Meeting with suppliers. I told Mark I'd expanded my volunteering. Church food bank. Library programs. Meals on Wheels. He never questioned it. Never asked for details. Never seemed to notice or care how I spent my days. He was staying out later. Coming home after midnight some nights. I'd be in bed pretending to sleep when he'd stumble in, smelling like smoke and alcohol and something floral I couldn't place. On a Wednesday in November I was doing laundry. Going through pockets before washing like I always did. Mark's work pants. I pulled out a crumpled receipt and almost tossed it without looking. Something made me unfold it. Riverside Casino. 3 days ago. Dinner for 2. $87. 2 glasses of champagne. 1 ribeye steak. 1 salmon. I stood there in our laundry room holding that piece of paper and something cold settled in my chest. Mark had told me he was working late on Monday. Project deadline. Wouldn't be home until 10. I stared at the receipt. 2 glasses of champagne. We hadn't had champagne together in 4 years. I'd suggested it once for our anniversary. Mark had said it was too expensive. Said we needed to watch our spending. Be responsible. But he'd bought champagne for someone else. I checked his other pants. The khakis from last week. The jeans from the weekend. 2 more receipts. Different dates. Same restaurant. Same casino. Always dinner for 2. Always expensive. I sat down on the laundry room floor with those 3 receipts spread in front of me like evidence at a crime scene. The money wasn't what hurt. I'd been secretly refilling our joint account with transfers from my business to cover his gambling withdrawals. I knew he was burning through our savings. Had been for years. But this felt different. This was deliberate. Planned. He was taking someone to dinner. Buying champagne. Spending money he claimed we didn't have on a woman who wasn't me. I didn't confront him that night. Or the next day. Instead I started watching. Really watching. He'd come home and shower immediately. Even on nights when he claimed he'd been at the office. Who showers after sitting at a desk? There was new cologne in our bathroom cabinet. Expensive stuff. I'd never bought it. When I asked him about it, he said it was a gift from a coworker. For his birthday. His birthday had been 6 months ago. He'd started using breath mints. Kept a tin in his car. Another in his jacket pocket. Mark had never cared about his breath before. Now he was 54 years old and suddenly worried about it. The pieces were all there. I'd just been too busy building my businesses to put them together. 2 weeks after I found the receipts, I checked our joint account. Another withdrawal. $22,000. Gone. In one transaction. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the screen on my laptop. $22,000. Our savings was almost empty now. When Mark came home that evening, I kept my voice calm. Light. Casual. I saw a withdrawal from our savings. $22,000. What was that for? His face changed. Got red. Angry. My mother needs emergency surgery, he snapped. How dare you question me about taking care of my own mother? Do you think I'm lying to you? I said nothing. Just looked at him. I can't believe you'd make this about money, he continued. My mother is sick and you're worried about the account balance. That's unbelievable, Sarah. Really unbelievable. I'm sorry, I said quietly. You're right. I shouldn't have asked. He nodded. Accepted my apology like it was his due. Went upstairs to change for dinner. I sat there at the kitchen table. His mother had been dead for 6 years. Died of pneumonia in a nursing home in Florida. We'd gone to the funeral together. He was lying to my face and didn't even care enough to make it believable anymore. I went upstairs. Sat on the edge of our bed. Thought about 7 years of waking up at 3:45. 7 years of burns on my hands and aching feet and pretending to be someone I wasn't. 7 years of building something while he destroyed everything. The next morning at the cafe, Rita took one look at my face and poured me coffee without asking. Added extra cream the way I liked it. Set it in front of me and squeezed my shoulder. You okay, honey? I nodded. Couldn't quite speak yet. She didn't push. Just went back to prepping for the morning rush. That's when I decided I needed to know for sure. Not a private investigator. I couldn't afford that. Couldn't risk the paper trail. Couldn't have Mark finding out I was checking on him. But Emma could help. Our neighbor's daughter. 16 years old. Worked part-time at my third location after school. Sweet kid. Good grades. Saving for college. I'd written her a reference letter for her applications. She called me Aunt Sarah when her parents weren't around. One afternoon during her shift, I asked her casually about the neighborhood. If she'd seen Mr. Parker much lately. She got quiet. Looked down at the register she was restocking with receipt paper. Ms. Mitchell, she said carefully, there's something I should probably tell you. She pulled out her phone. Opened her photos. Showed me. Mark's car in our driveway on a Thursday afternoon. 2:15 p.m. When he should have been at work. A woman getting into the passenger seat. Blonde hair. Young. Maybe early 30s. Another photo. Same woman leaving our house 2 hours later. 3 more photos. Different days. Same pattern. I wasn't trying to spy, Emma said quickly. But I walk home from school past your house and I kept seeing her. And I thought you should know. In case you didn't know. I'm sorry. I looked at those photos. This girl had been documenting my husband's affair for 3 months. Taking pictures because she thought I should know. Because she cared enough to protect me. Thank you, I managed to say. Can you send these to me? She did. To my business phone. The prepaid one Mark didn't know existed. That night I waited until Mark was in the shower. Went through his phone. The password was still my birthday. Had been for 12 years. I opened his messages. Hundreds of texts from a contact saved as Br. Brittany, I assumed. I scrolled through them. Didn't read every word. Couldn't. But I read enough. Plans to leave me. Discussions about timing. About how much money he'd get in the divorce. She's so boring, Brittany had written. She doesn't even have a job. What does she do all day? Mark's response, I know. You're right. I deserve better. Someone who actually contributes something. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Went downstairs. Made myself a cup of tea. My hands weren't shaking. That's what surprised me most. I'd expected to fall apart, to cry, to feel destroyed. Yet I felt calm. I'd spent 7 years building something while he destroyed everything we had. 7 years being afraid of losing him, losing our life, losing my security. But sitting there in our kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, I realized something. I had nothing left to lose. I'd already lost it all years ago when he made me quit my job. When he started controlling every dollar. When he turned me into someone small and invisible. I just hadn't been ready to admit it until now. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. I sat in our kitchen until 3 in the morning, drinking tea that had gone cold, thinking about 7 years of lies and what came next. When my alarm went off at 3:45, I was already dressed. The drive to Millbrook felt different that morning. Lighter somehow. Like I'd been carrying something heavy and had finally set it down. Rita was waiting in the parking lot like always. She took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" "I'll tell you later," I said. "Let's just get through the morning rush first." We opened at 4:30. Served the usual crowd. Frank with his black coffee and newspaper. Linda the night nurse with her light and sweet and blueberry muffin. David the truck driver passing through on his Tuesday route. Normal. Everything was normal except nothing would ever be normal again. By 9:30 the morning rush had cleared. Rita poured us both coffee and sat across from me at the corner table. "Talk," she said. I told her everything. The receipts. The photos Emma had taken. Going through Mark's phone. The text messages. Brittany. Rita listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Good riddance," she said simply. I almost laughed. "That's it? That's your advice? Honey, I watched you build this place from nothing. Watched you work yourself half to death while that man sat at home doing nothing. You don't need advice. You already know what you're going to do." He was right. I did know. The divorce papers arrived on a Monday morning in March. 3 weeks after I'd found the receipts. 2 weeks after Emma showed me the photos. I'd just gotten home from my opening shift. Still had coffee stains on my fingers. I was pulling into our driveway when a man in a polo shirt walked up to my car window. "Sarah Parker?" "Yes. You've been served." He handed me a manila envelope. Waited while I signed his clipboard. Then he got back in his car and drove away. I sat there in my driveway and opened the envelope. Petition for dissolution of marriage. I read through the paperwork slowly. Mark was asking for the house. Both cars. Half of any retirement accounts or hidden assets. And alimony. Alimony. From me. From the woman he thought had been sitting home doing nothing for 10 years. His lawyer had included a statement. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Mrs. Parker has been voluntarily unemployed for a decade. She has no marketable skills or employment prospects. She is financially dependent and incapable of self-support. Given her age and extended absence from the workforce, she will require significant spousal support to maintain even a minimal standard of living. I sat there in my car and started laughing. I couldn't help it. The irony was so perfect it was almost beautiful. Mark thought I was unemployable. Thought I was helpless. Thought I'd been doing nothing for 10 years while he supported us. I laughed until tears ran down my face. Mark came home 2 hours later. I was sitting at the kitchen table with the papers spread in front of me. He walked in looking nervous. Guilty. Like a kid caught doing something wrong. "Sarah," he started. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Not sorry for cheating. Not sorry for lying. Not sorry for the affair or the gambling or any of it. Just sorry I'd found out through legal papers instead of him telling me himself. I think this is best for both of us," he continued when I didn't say anything. "We've grown apart. You deserve someone who can make you happy." I almost laughed again. He was using therapy language. Making it sound mutual. Like we'd both decided this together. "When are you moving out?" I asked. He looked relieved. "This week. I've already started packing. I'll get the rest of my stuff over the next few days." "Where are you going?" "Staying with a friend. Until we figure everything out." "A friend. Right." He moved out on Thursday. Packed his clothes and his golf clubs and the TV from the living room. I helped him carry boxes to his car. Didn't fight. Didn't cry. Didn't beg him to stay. He seemed almost giddy with how easy I was making it. "We can be adults about this," he said, loading the last box into his trunk. Split things fairly. No reason to make it ugly. Whatever you think is fair, I said. He smiled. Actually smiled. Then he kissed my forehead like I was a child. You'll be okay, he said. Maybe you can get a job at Target or something. Get back on your feet. I watched him drive away. Stood in our driveway until his car disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside and called Patricia Chin. Patricia was 63 years old. Sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued. Her daughter Amy worked at my fourth location. Had been working there for 8 months. Amy had mentioned once that her mother was a lawyer who specialized in family law. I'd filed that information away without thinking much about it. Now I needed it. Patricia answered on the second ring. This is Patricia. Miss Chin, this is Sarah Mitchell. Amy's boss from the cafe. I need a lawyer. There was a pause. What kind of lawyer? Divorce. Come to my office. 2 o'clock today. Bring the papers. She took my case after hearing 5 minutes of the story. Said she'd seen men like Mark before. Said she'd handled her own ugly divorce 15 years ago and knew exactly how this would play out. He thinks you're helpless, she said, reading through Mark's filing. His lawyer thinks you're helpless. They're going to push for a quick settlement. Pressure you to take whatever they offer because they think you're desperate. I'm not desperate. No, Patricia said, looking up at me with something like respect. I don't think you are. A week later, Patricia came to Millbrook. Said she wanted to see my businesses. Understand exactly what we were working with. I took her to all 4 locations. The original cafe where Rita was managing the lunch rush. The second location where Jasmine had just hired 2 new employees. The third near the hospital that was doing steady business. The fourth by the highway where Bobby was training a new cook. Patricia met everyone. Rita gave her coffee and a cinnamon roll that made her close her eyes and make a sound of appreciation. Jasmine showed her the employee schedule she'd designed on spreadsheet software she'd taught herself. Bobby made her a breakfast sandwich that was so good she asked for the recipe. Maria hugged her without asking permission. Patricia took notes. Asked questions. Looked at everything with the eye of someone who knew what mattered. Afterward we sat in my office. A tiny room behind the original cafe with a desk I'd bought at a yard sale for $40 and a filing cabinet that didn't quite close right. Here's what's going to happen, Patricia said. His lawyer is going to paint you as helpless. They're going to argue you need support. Need help. Can't survive without your husband. They're betting you'll settle fast because you're scared and have no options. She paused. Looked at me directly. Are you scared? I thought about 3:45 a.m. wake-ups. Burned hands from learning to use a steam wand. Crying in my car in grocery store parking lots. Building something from nothing while Mark gambled away our savings. Working 6 days a week while he told people his wife didn't work. No, I said. I'm not scared anymore. Patricia smiled. Good. Because we're going to let them think they're winning right up until they're not. She explained her strategy. Minimal disclosure. Just enough to comply with court orders. Let Mark's lawyer make assumptions. Let them build their case on the belief that I was unemployable and helpless. Men like your husband, Patricia said, they believe their own lies. He's convinced himself you're nothing without him. His lawyer believes it because it's easier than the truth. He pulled out a legal pad. Started making a list. I need tax returns for Mitchell Enterprises. Employee testimonials. Business licenses. Franchise corporate documentation if you have it. Property deeds. Bank statements showing consistent income. Everything that proves you're not just employed, you're successful. She looked up. How many locations did you say you have? 4. Get me documentation for all 4. Actually, I said, I need to correct that. I bought 2 more properties last month. I'm signing the final paperwork tomorrow. Patricia stopped writing. Looked at me. Then she started laughing. Oh, she said, this is going to be fun. Patricia filed our response to Mark's petition the next week. I didn't read it before she submitted it. Told her I trusted her judgment. Smart woman, she said. The court date was set for November. 8 months away. 8 months of waiting. 8 months of pretending. Mark's lawyer started sending demands almost immediately. Lists of assets he wanted. Questions about my finances. Requests for bank statements and employment history and anything else they could think of. Patricia would read them at her desk while I sat across from her and she'd laugh. "Listen to this one," she said during one of our meetings. "They want documentation of any income you've received in the past 10 years. Any employment. Any business ventures." What do we tell them? The truth. She smiled. Petitioner has no significant assets to report in her name as Sarah Parker. Petitioner's employment history has been provided. Petitioner maintains no retirement accounts registered under her married name. Every word was technically true. Sarah Parker had nothing. Sarah Mitchell had 6 cafe locations and a healthy bank account and more employees than Mark had ever managed. Won't they figure it out? I asked. Eventually, yes. In court. When it's too late for them to change strategy. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Right now they're operating on assumptions. We're not going to correct those assumptions until we absolutely have to. Meanwhile, Mark was living his best life. At least that's what it looked like on social media. I didn't follow him. Didn't follow Brittany either. But Amy, Patricia's daughter who worked at my 4th location, would show me things sometimes. Not to be cruel. Just to keep me informed. Brittany posted photos of their trip to Miami. Beach shots. Fancy restaurants. Hotel room with an ocean view that probably cost $300 a night. New furniture being delivered to their apartment. A leather couch that looked expensive. A dining table that matched. Dinners at steakhouses with plates that cost more than most people's grocery budget. Where is he getting the money? I asked Patricia during one of our meetings. He pulled out a document. He took a loan against his car title. $18,000. Terrible interest rate. He's paying it off monthly at nearly $500. He thinks he's going to win, I said slowly. He thinks he's going to get the house and enough money for me to pay it all back. Exactly. I sat there thinking about that. Mark had borrowed $18,000 to finance his new life with Brittany. He was so confident he'd win the divorce that he'd gone into debt before it was even settled. The mediation sessions were the worst part. Court mandated. We had to attend 4 of them over those 8 months. Sit in a conference room with Mark, his lawyer, Patricia, and a mediator who was supposed to help us reach an agreement. Mark's lawyer would make his case. Paint me as helpless. Unemployable. Dependent. Mrs. Parker has been out of the workforce for 10 years, he'd say, looking at the mediator with practiced sympathy. That's a significant gap. In today's job market, a woman her age with no recent experience faces nearly insurmountable barriers to employment. I'd sit there with my hands folded in my lap, looking down at the table. We understand this is difficult, he'd continue. But with some retraining, perhaps community college courses, Mrs. Parker might find entry-level employment. Retail perhaps. Food service. Something to help her get back on her feet. Patricia would kick me under the table when my face showed too much amusement. I'd rearrange my expression. Look worried. Hidden. Yes, I'd say quietly when asked. It has been a long time. I am worried about my future. Mark would look at me with something between pity and contempt. Like I was a problem he was trying to solve as kindly as possible. The mediator would suggest compromises. Maybe Mark could keep the house but pay me a small settlement. Maybe I could take one car and he'd take the other. Maybe alimony for just 2 years instead of 5. Patricia would say we'd consider it. Take the proposals back to me. Think it over. We never accepted any of them. After the second mediation session, Patricia and I walked to our cars together. She was shaking her head. You're enjoying this too much, she said. Am I? Yes. I saw you trying not to smile when his lawyer called you unemployable. I had been trying not to smile. There was something darkly satisfying about watching them underestimate me so completely. About knowing what was coming and knowing they had no idea. But there were other nights. Nights when the satisfaction faded and I'd lie awake wondering if I was becoming like Mark. Keeping this secret made me just as much a liar as he was. I told Rita about it one morning during a slow period at the cafe. Don't you dare feel guilty, she said immediately. Her voice was sharp, firm. You didn't hide this business to hurt him. You hid it to survive him. But I'm lying to the court. To his lawyer. To everyone. No. Rita set down the cloth she'd been using to wipe tables. You're protecting yourself. That's different. I lost everything in my divorce 20 years ago. Everything. My ex hid assets, lied to the judge, made me look like the villain. I had to start over at 40 with nothing. You're not doing what he did. You built something while he was destroying everything. Those aren't the same thing. Jasmine said something similar when I mentioned it to her. She'd been restocking supplies in the back when I came in looking rough after a particularly bad mediation session. You did what you had to do, she said simply. That's not the same as what he did. I left my ex with $32 and my daughter. Slept in my car for 2 weeks. Nobody calls that lying. They call it surviving. But Bobby surprised me most. He pulled me aside one afternoon during a quiet shift. We were the only ones in the cafe besides one customer reading a book in the corner. Ms. Mitchell, he said quietly, I've lied to a lot of people in my life. For drugs. For money. For stupid reasons I'm not proud of. I spent 3 years in prison because of choices I made. I nodded. Waited for him to continue. But I never lied to protect myself from someone who was supposed to love me. What you did. That's not lying. That's survival. There's a difference. Coming from Bobby who'd paid dearly for his mistakes, it meant something. Month 6 brought a crisis I hadn't anticipated. A man walked into my cafe on a Tuesday morning. I was behind the counter helping with the morning rush because one of our regular staff had called in sick. I looked up to take his order and my stomach dropped. Dirk. Mark's coworker. I'd met him twice. Once at a company picnic years ago. Once at a barbecue at our house. Our eyes met. I saw recognition flash across his face. His mouth started to open. Rita moved faster than I'd ever seen her move. She stepped between us, blocking his view of me, her voice loud and cheerful. I'm sorry, sir, but Ms. Mitchell is handling a private business call. I'd be happy to help you with your order. She physically turned him toward a table on the far side of the cafe. Away from the counter. Away from me. I disappeared into the back office. Closed the door. Sat down at my desk with my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I heard Rita's voice. Friendly. Professional. Taking his order. Making small talk. After what felt like hours but was probably 10 minutes, she came to find me. He's gone, she said. Didn't see you. I made sure of it. Are you certain? Positive. Kept myself between you and him the whole time. Talked his ear off about the menu until he was too distracted to think about anything else. I sat there trying to breathe normally. That had been close. Too close. If Derek had recognized me and mentioned it to Mark, everything would have fallen apart. The secret would have been out before the court date. Mark would have had time to prepare. His lawyer would have had time to change strategy. That night, after closing the cafe, I sat in my car in the empty parking lot and called Patricia. I'm ready, I said. Let's finish this. The court date is still 3 months away. I know. But I'm ready. I'm done hiding. Done pretending. Done waiting for him to figure it out. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Okay, she said finally. Let's finish this. The final 3 months passed in a blur of preparation. Patricia and I met twice a week, going over documents, rehearsing questions, building our case piece by piece. Don't volunteer information, she'd remind me. Answer only what's asked. Keep your voice steady. Look at the judge, not at Mark. The night before the hearing I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed in the house that would soon not be mine, staring at the ceiling, thinking about 10 years of marriage. 8 years of secrets. One day to end it all. I got up at 3:45 out of habit. Made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table in the dark. At 5 my phone buzzed. A text from Rita. We're all with you today. You've got this. Another from Jasmine. Kick his butt, boss. Bobby sent a photo of a breakfast sandwich with a note. Made this thinking of you. Go show them who you are. Maria sent a prayer in Spanish I had to use a translator to read. I got dressed carefully. Not in my usual jeans and cafe t-shirt. In a navy dress Jasmine had lent me. Simple. Plain. No jewelry except my wedding ring, which I'd kept wearing through everything because Patricia said it would look better in court. Low heels that hurt my feet. Hair pulled back in a bun. No makeup. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I looked tired. Older. Exactly like what Mark's lawyer would expect. Perfect. The courthouse was downtown. 40 minutes from Millbrook. I got there 30 minutes early and sat in my car, breathing slowly, trying to calm my racing heart. Patricia met me at the entrance. She was wearing a sharp gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase that looked expensive. Ready? She asked. Yes. We walked in together. Through security. Up the elevator. Down a hallway that smelled like floor polish and old coffee. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Beige walls. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. Wooden benches that looked uncomfortable. Mark was already there. Sitting on the left side with his lawyer. He was wearing a new suit. Dark blue. Probably cost $500 he didn't have. Brittany was in the back row. Blonde hair styled perfectly. Dressed too tight and too young for a courtroom. She kept touching her hair and smiling at Mark. I sat down next to Patricia on the right side. Folded my hands in my lap. Didn't look at Mark. The judge came in a few minutes later. A woman in her early 60s. Reading glasses on, a chain around her neck. Gray hair cut short. Face that said she'd heard every lie people could tell and didn't believe any of them. All rise for the Honorable Judge Morrison, the bailiff said. We all stood. Sat back down when she gestured for us to. Judge Morrison looked at the papers in front of her. Looked at Mark. Looked at me. We're here for the dissolution of marriage between Mark Parker and Sarah Parker, she said. Her voice was flat. Professional. Like she did this 20 times a week. Mr. Parker, your attorney may proceed. Mark's lawyer stood up. Richard something. I'd heard his name but hadn't bothered to remember it. He was tall. Silver hair. Expensive suit. Smile that probably worked on most people. Your Honor, he began, this is a straightforward case. Mrs. Parker has been out of the workforce for 10 years. She voluntarily left a retail management position to focus on being a homemaker. A choice she made freely. A choice that has consequences. I kept my face neutral. Let him talk. She has no recent employment history. No current income. No retirement savings. She is, by any reasonable measure, unemployable in today's job market. He said it so confidently. Like it was a fact everyone agreed on. A woman of 53 with a decade-long gap in her resume faces nearly insurmountable barriers to employment. My client, Mr. Parker, has been the sole financial provider throughout this marriage. He's maintained steady employment. Paid the mortgage. Covered all household expenses. I watched Judge Morrison. Her face didn't change. Just listened. Took notes. Mrs. Parker has contributed nothing financially, Richard continued. In fact, she spent considerable money from their joint accounts on personal expenses we're still attempting to document. He looked at me when he said it. Like I was some kind of frivolous spender who'd blown our savings on shoes and purses. I said nothing. Just sat there. Mr. Parker is requesting an equitable division of assets, Richard said. Which, given Mrs. Parker's complete lack of financial contribution, means she should receive minimal settlement. Perhaps enough to get her through 6 months while she seeks employment. Entry-level retail. Food service. Anything to help her rebuild basic work skills. Entry-level retail. Like I hadn't managed 3 departments and 42 employees before Mark made me quit. Your Honor, this is simply a matter of practical reality. Mrs. Parker needs to face facts. She has no skills. No income. No future prospects. The sooner she accepts this and agrees to reasonable terms, the sooner both parties can move forward with their lives. He sat down. Looked pleased with himself. Mark nodded along. Looked at me with something between pity and contempt. Brittany was smiling in the back row. Judge Morrison made another note. Looked up at Patricia. Counsel for Mrs. Parker? Patricia stood slowly. She's not a tall woman. 5'4" maybe. But something about the way she moved made the room feel smaller. Your Honor, she said, her voice calm and clear, I have just one question for Mrs. Parker. Judge Morrison nodded. Proceed. Patricia turned to me. Our eyes met. This was it. 8 years of secrets. 8 months of preparation. One moment to change everything. Mrs. Parker, she said, could you tell the court about Corner Cup Cafe? The room went very quiet. I could feel Mark's confusion from across the aisle. Heard Brittany shift in her seat behind him. I stood up. Smoothed down the borrowed dress. Looked directly at Judge Morrison. Your Honor, I own and operate Corner Cup Cafe. It's a coffee and sandwich shop in Millbrook, about 40 minutes from here. Mark's lawyer started to say something. Judge Morrison held up her hand. Stopped him. Continue, Mrs. Parker, she said. I purchased the cafe 8 years ago using a small inheritance from my grandmother. $45,000. It was failing when I bought it. Nearly bankrupt. I turned it around within 18 months. Made it profitable. I could see Mark's face from the corner of my eye. He'd gone pale. I've since expanded to 6 locations across 3 counties. Lubbock, Riverside, Hartfield. Each location profitable. Each one built through careful reinvestment of earnings. My voice was steady. Clear. This was the easy part. I was just telling the truth. I currently employ 47 people. Full-time and part-time staff. Many of them are women rebuilding their lives. Starting over. Getting second chances. Judge Morrison was leaning forward slightly. Paying attention. Last year my businesses generated $180,000 in owner's draw for me personally. That's after all expenses. Food, supplies, rent, everything. Richard was shuffling papers frantically, looking for something he wasn't going to find. I also own 2 commercial properties. The buildings that house my 4th and 5th locations. Purchased with business profits. Valued at approximately $400,000 combined. I paused. Took a breath. I work opening shifts 6 days a week. 4:30 in the morning until 9. Sometimes longer when we're short-staffed or training new employees. I've been doing this for 8 years. I finally looked at Mark. His face had gone from pale to gray. His mouth was slightly open. I've never missed a mortgage payment on our house, I said, still looking at him. In fact, for the last 4 years, my income has been supplementing our joint account. Covering withdrawals my husband made. $45,000 total. The exact amount of my inheritance. Money he spent on gambling losses and his affair. Brittany stood up in the back row. Walked out. I heard the courtroom door close behind her. Mark didn't even notice she'd left. Patricia stood and pulled documents from her briefcase. Thick folders. Years of careful record-keeping. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence supporting Mrs. Parker's testimony. She handed the first folder to the bailiff, who passed it to Judge Morrison. Tax returns. 8 years of them. Showing consistent business income under Mitchell Enterprises, LLC. Employee testimonials. Letters from Rita, Jasmine, Bobby, Maria and 15 others. Talking about Ms. Mitchell, who gave them jobs when nobody else would. Who paid fair wages. Who treated them like family. Health inspection reports. All 6 locations. All passing. All signed by Sarah Mitchell as owner-operator. Business licenses. Proper documentation filed with the state. Everything legal. Everything transparent. Property deeds for the 2 commercial buildings I owned. Bank statements showing the growth of my business accounts. The consistent deposits. The careful management. And finally, a letter from the franchise corporate office. Congratulating me on being named Franchisee of the Year for exceptional business turnaround and community impact. Judge Morrison read through everything slowly. Mark's lawyer kept trying to interrupt. She'd hold up one finger. Keep reading. When she finished, she looked up at Richard. Counsel, you were saying Mrs. Parker has hidden assets? Richard stood quickly. Your Honor, these documents show clear deception. Mrs. Parker deliberately concealed. Every business document was filed properly with the state, Patricia interrupted calmly. Under Mrs. Parker's legal maiden name, which she has every right to use. All taxes were paid. All business dealings were completely legitimate and transparent. But she never told my client. The only thing Mrs. Parker hid, Patricia said, her voice sharp now, was her business from a husband who'd proven himself untrustworthy with money. She pulled out another document. Bank statements for our joint account. Your Honor, over the past 8 years Mr. Parker withdrew $45,000 from their joint account. The exact amount of Mrs. Parker's inheritance from her grandmother. He spent it on gambling losses and funding an extramarital affair. Meanwhile, Mrs. Parker was actually depositing money into that same account from her business earnings to keep their household afloat and prevent their mortgage from defaulting. He let that sink in. Mr. Parker has already taken his share. Every penny Mrs. Parker earned through her business was kept completely separate from marital assets. Judge Morrison looked at Richard. Does your client have anything else to present? Richard looked at Mark. Mark looked like he might be sick. No, Your Honor, Richard said quietly. Judge Morrison took off her reading glasses, set them on her papers, looked at Mark for a long moment. Mr. Parker, your wife spent 8 years working 80-hour weeks to build a successful business while you gambled away your family's savings and pursued an extramarital affair. Mark started to speak. She held up her hand. The fact that you didn't know about her business speaks to your lack of attention, not her lack of transparency. This court finds that you've already received more than your fair share of marital assets through your systematic depletion of joint accounts. She picked up her pen, started writing. Mr. Parker will receive his personal belongings, his vehicle, and half of his retirement account that he hasn't already borrowed against. Mrs. Parker will retain the marital home, all business assets, all business-related properties, and all business accounts. No alimony will be awarded to either party. Mark's face went red. Your Honor, that's not. Consider yourself fortunate this ruling isn't worse. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. We're done here. She stood, left through the door behind the bench. I sat there for a moment, not quite believing it was over. Patricia squeezed my arm. Congratulations. I walked out of that courtroom on shaking legs. Patricia beside me. Through the doors into the hallway. And there they were. Rita, Jasmine, Bobby, and Maria. Standing together near the elevators. They'd driven up together. Taken the morning off. Come to be there for me. Jasmine was crying. She ran over and hugged me so hard I almost fell backward. Bobby grabbed me next. Lifted me off my feet. That's our boss, he said, laughing. Maria just held my face in her hands and said something in Spanish I didn't understand but felt in my chest. Rita stood back watching. When the others finally let me go, she stepped forward. Welcome home, boss, she said like she'd been saying for 8 years. I couldn't speak. Just nodded. Tried not to cry. We stood there in that courthouse hallway, the 5 of us, until Patricia said she needed to file some paperwork and I should go home. Rest. Let it all sink in. But I didn't get to leave yet. Because Mark found me in the parking lot 20 minutes later. I was walking to my car with Rita and the others when I heard my name. Sarah. I turned. He was standing by his car. Brittany wasn't with him. I'd seen her leave during the hearing. Walk right past the courthouse windows. Didn't even wait to hear the outcome. I'll wait in the car, Rita said quietly. The others followed her. Left me standing there alone with my ex-husband. He looked smaller somehow. Older. The new suit that had looked expensive in the courtroom just looked like clothes now. You've been lying to me for 8 years, he said. I stopped walking. Turned to face him completely. Yes, I said. I lied about where I went every morning. I lied about what I did with my grandmother's money. I lied about having no income, no prospects, no future. I took a breath. You lied about loving me. About respecting me. About where our savings went. About working late. About who you were spending time with. You lied about your mother needing surgery. Your mother who's been dead for 6 years. He flinched. Looked away. The difference, I continued, is that I lied to survive you. You lied because you stopped caring enough to tell me the truth. He started to say something. I held up my hand. The same gesture Judge Morrison had used. We're done here, I said. I got in my car. Rita was in the passenger seat. Jasmine and Bobby and Maria were in Jasmine's car behind us. I drove away. Didn't look back. We went to the original cafe. Even though it was the middle of the day and we were all supposed to be working. We went there because it was home. Rita made coffee. Bobby made sandwiches nobody ate. We just sat there at the corner table. The 5 of us. Not saying much. Just being together. 3 months later, everything had changed and nothing had changed. I sold the house. Moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in Millbrook. Walking distance from the original cafe. I could see the morning light through those east-facing windows from my bedroom. The divorce was final. The paperwork signed. Mark was gone. I heard he'd moved 2 hours away. New job. New city. Brittany hadn't lasted a month after the hearing. I opened the 7th location in January. Rita managed it. She'd earned it. Started teaching a business class at the community college. Once a month. Free. Starting over. Business basics for women in transition. 30 women came to the first class. Sat in those plastic chairs and listened while I talked about profit margins and business licenses and not being afraid to start over. 50 came to the second one. By the third we had to move to a bigger room. I hired 3 new women that spring. All recently divorced. All with gaps in their resumes. All with shaking hands when they came in for interviews. Claire was 57. 20-year employment gap. Ex-husband had controlled everything. I hired her to work mornings at the original location. On her first day I taught her how to use the coffee machine. The same one Rita had taught me on 8 years ago. New machine but same feeling. She pulled her first espresso shot and looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I did it," she whispered. "You did," I said. Rita walked by with a tray of Maria's fresh muffins. Squeezed my shoulder without stopping. "Another day, boss." I looked around the cafe. Early morning light streaming through those windows. The smell of fresh coffee and baking bread. The sound of the door chiming as Frank came in for his regular order. Claire nervous but trying. Rita steady and strong. Bobby in the kitchen making someone's breakfast. Maria in back preparing dough for tomorrow. This was my life now. This was what I'd built. Not for revenge. Not to hurt Mark. But to save myself. On my desk in the back office I'd framed Graham's note. "For your escape fund whenever you need it. You're stronger than you know." I was stronger. I knew that now. And every morning at 5 a.m. when I unlocked that door and turned on those lights and started the coffee brewing, I proved it all over again. If this story of quiet strength and ultimate justice had you cheering, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Sarah finally revealed her 6 thriving businesses in that courtroom. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more inspiring stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.